Welcome to Spotlight Television. My name is Tom Hegna, and I'm your host today with Imran and Daniel Razvi. They are part of the Higher Ground Financial Group. They're located in Baltimore, Maryland, but they serve clients all around the country. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Tom.
Now,
Hello.
Tell us a little bit how you got to this business. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, about 30 years ago, I answered an ad, help people and make money. I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but it was insurance. And got into management, continued in that process, really liked helping people, really liked the insurance field. And then after about 20 years, I got kind of fed up because I wanted to be more of a fiduciary and be able to offer many companies as opposed to just one company. So about 10 years ago, Daniel, my eldest son, and I, we opened up Higher Ground Financial Group as more of a retirement income planning firm than anything else. And as a fiduciary, we can offer any company out there as opposed to just having one company that we're working for.
Now, what do you do when you're not doing financial stuff and helping people?
Well, Tom, as you know, I have 13 children. So we adopted 8 children, have 5 birth children. So through that adoption, we created Conquered by Love Ministries. It is a nonprofit organization, and my wife and I have written about 45 books to help parents overcome emotional needs in children and help them mature better without medication. And so it's at conqueredbylove.org. We do that, and we speak all over the country. In fact, we speak in a couple other countries as well.
Daniel, what do you do when you're not doing financial stuff?
Well, I really enjoy spending time with my wife and kids, but my background before I went to law school was actually piano, so I'm a concert pianist. And so when I'm not helping clients, then I'm often performing piano, and we have concerts monthly at our house and bring in clients and friends and a lot of other musicians to perform with me, and it's a lot of fun. I love classical music.
So now tell me about your business. Is there really a difference between an investment advisor and, say, an income advisor or tax advisor? Kind of share where you're at with that.
Yeah, so an investment advisor, you have them, they're creating investment or money for you. And I want to share a story with you. This is a can, right? People notice a can. So what's the story behind a can? Well, Napoleon could only conquer the world if his food didn't spoil. But once his food started spoiling, so he put out a contest. He said, somebody please preserve our food so we can conquer the world. And somebody came up with a can. It wasn't this, but it was a can. But there was something missing from that can. You know what was missing? The can opener. They didn't have a can opener for 50 years later, 48 years. That didn't mean you had to preserve the food for 48 years. It just meant that you had to use a hammer and chisel and ruin some of the food. So when you've been saving and working and saving all your life and putting money in the IRAs, TSPs, 401ks, 403bs, now you got to get the money out without ruining it. So you want to minimize taxes, fees, and risk and make sure that you get the most use out of your money. And that's why we're different as income planners as opposed to investment advisors.
So what are the top 3 things that people can do who've watched this interview today to minimize their risk, fees, and taxes?
Well, the first thing, Tom, is they got to identify what's happening. They got to identify the risk, the fees, the taxes, and then start eliminating those, right? If you take them off the table, it makes it a lot easier. You're not losing money. That's one thing. And, if you're playing a football game and you're in the last quarter, you're winning by 30 points, you're not going to leave your best players in. You're going to pull them out. Why leave them there to get injured? And same thing with your money. If you're got enough money to have enough income for the rest of your life, why do you want to risk it? There's no reason to risk that. And then the last thing is, if you're not retired yet, then you can change your contributions in your 401k or TSP or 403b to Roth contributions. Now, whatever the company's matching, that'll still be tax deferred, but at least what you're putting in will be tax-free growth after that, because you pay a little bit higher taxes now, but you will never pay taxes on the growth after that.
I think of all the successful people, athletes and movie stars, and they had plenty of money. They could have been set for the rest of their lives, but they took risk with it, and they lost everything. It just makes my heart hurt when I see that, because if you've got money, one of the biggest things you want to do is protect it. You've got to protect the wealth as well as grow the wealth, and I think that's what you guys do very well.
One of the most famous investors of all time is Warren Buffett, and he has his rule number 1, which is don't lose money. And in fact, his rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. So it's very, very important to not lose money. And if you don't lose money to those 3 biggest killers in retirement, risk, fees, and taxes, everything else gets better.
Some people say no risk, no reward. Is that true?
In some cases it's true, but in many cases it's not true. Risk and reward are not necessarily linked like people think that they are. So, for example, back in 2000, if you had $1 million and you invested it for about 20 years, with all the market risk, you might have come up with about $2.5 million after the 20 years. But if you invested in treasuries guaranteed by the federal government, you would have had over $3.5 million. So you'd have a lot more money at the end with no risk. So many times taking less or even no risk will give you a better result. It really depends on the time period. It depends on what your goals are, but you want to not have risk and reward linked. They can be separate in many cases, and they should be considered separately.
Now, one of the things you do is try to help people increase their income. I mean, is it really possible to double somebody's income in retirement?
Yeah, Tom, I mean, most investment advisors say between 2.8 to 4% is your withdrawal rate. It doesn't really matter what the mix of the stocks and bonds are, right? So you're stuck with 4%.
So if I have $1 million, I can only spend $30,000 or $40,000 at the most?
That's with traditional planning. But when we talk about the volatility buffer or sequence of returns, Daniel, what can we do?
So there's really two reasons why advisors usually say to only spend 3 or 4% in retirement. And one is sequence of returns risk. That's the idea that there will be good years and bad years in retirement. And we can't control when those happen. So if they happen early on, it'll be a double hit to the retirement. You take a withdrawal and the market crash, so now it's like a double withdrawal, and it's really hard to recover. And that's why you can't take very much income out, even if your investments are averaging better than that. And then the other risk in retirement is living too long, longevity risk. If you live a really long time, you might run out of money. And so there's two ways to deal with those two problems in retirement. If sequence of returns risk can be dealt with using a volatility buffer strategy. And the volatility buffer is the idea that not all of your money is in the market. Some, maybe half or even the majority, is safe or protected, that in the bad years, you can use that account to pay for your lifestyle. And in the good years, when the market's doing well, then you can use your equities, your market assets. But now you have a choice each year, so you never have to take that double hit in retirement. So that's volatility buffer. And then the longevity risk can be handled with guaranteed lifetime income. So you can get if you don't have a pension already, you can get a private pension, some kind of product that guarantees a certain payment for life. And some of them even have inflation increases on those. And that's a really good way. So a lot of times now your safe withdrawal rate using those strategies can be 6 or even 7%, and you're never running out of money because you handled sequence of returns and you handled the longevity risk.
Now, Daniel, you're a tax attorney.
Yes.
And I know your clients appreciate that fact. Why are taxes so important in the retirement equation?
Well, there's several things that change when you retire. Now you got to be spending money, and you have a limited number of sources to get money out in retirement. Most people have almost all their money in tax-deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, TSPs. And they've been told to defer, just kick the can down the road. But it's not really kicking a can down the road.
No, it's a snowball. You're kicking a snowball down a hill, and it's getting bigger and bigger and out of control.
So this is a little toy, slinky toy. And if this is your money now, and as you grow and save and invest, and then eventually leave to the kids, this is your total wealth. Would you rather pay tax on this or pay tax on this? I mean, most people would much rather pay tax on the seed instead of the harvest. But we defer. So what can you do? You can do a Roth conversion. So you can convert the IRA to Roth, and that means you pay tax now, and it hurts to pay tax, but it's better to pay a little bit more tax now instead of paying a lot more later. And there's only a couple more years left before the tax rates go up. And who knows what will happen after that, but they are going up in a couple years.
Daniel, aren't there strategies to be able to reduce the taxes?
Yes, there are strategies to reduce the taxes. Again, if you pay them before the rates go up, so that's one thing. But what if you say, well, I don't know where I'm going to get the money even to pay that tax? There are some other strategies you can use that are outside of your IRAs, such as a charitable trust, for example. So you could have a charitable remainder trust. And what that does is it allows you to get rid of an asset that is highly appreciated, like a stock or maybe a rental property, that if you sold it, you really only have a couple choices normally.
Capital gains or 1031 exchange.
Right. So if you don't want that, you could donate the property or the stock to a charitable trust, and then you defer the capital gains indefinitely. So you don't pay those capital gains. You also get a giant tax deduction for doing that because the money will someday go to charity.
It's about 50%, right?
And depending on your age, if you're retired, it's going to be around 50%. And then you get a pension from that. So the pension is 5 or 6% off of that for the rest of your life. And that allows you to get rid of the capital gains. They're deferred indefinitely. You get a big tax deduction, and you can take that deduction over to your IRAs and make it into a Roth account. So you're killing 3 or 4 birds with one stone. And at the end, that account does go to charity, but you get all these upfront benefits for that. So there's a whole bunch of different strategies that you can use in retirement that are very different than the tax strategies you might use while you're working.
Are you concerned about any of the new tax rules that are planned?
Yes, so in 2 years, as I mentioned, the tax rates or the tax cuts from several years ago are going to expire. So the rates are going to go up. Now, many people are aware of that because it's been talked about on the news, but a lot of people are not aware that the brackets themselves may be shrinking quite a bit because we have high inflation adjustments on these current brackets. So you may find that when you reach that time a couple years from now, you may go up 2 or 3 brackets, not just one bracket, because the room in each bracket is shrinking dramatically. Most people, when they come to us and they have most of their money in IRAs, the IRAs are their least favorite bucket of money because they hate paying taxes. Every time you take the money out, you got to pay more tax, and you have those required distributions, even if your plan is to leave it to the kids, because that's another new law recently, the Secure Act, which prevents you from doing the stretch IRA. So when you die, it used to be your kids could inherit that money and pay taxes over their lifetime. Now they got to pay all the tax within 10 years. And it's just a mess.
You talk a lot about the important years in retirement. What are those most important years in retirement?
Very good question. In the last 4 years before you retire and the first 4 years of retirement are very important. Think about it. If you retired in 1996 and took out 5% per year, you'd be fine. But if 4 years later in 2000, you took out 5%, you'd be broke in 18 years. That's how just 4 years makes a difference. We just don't know when the bad years are going to be in retirement. So we have to take precautions and make sure we have a volatility buffer, make sure we have the risk handled so that we don't have those problems. So then it doesn't matter if we retire in a bad environment because we're okay.
If you've handled the 3 biggest killers to retirement, which really are, and they really are killers, these are the most common ways to lose money in retirement is risk, fees, and taxes. If you can get rid of those, reduce or eliminate them to the greatest extent possible, it increases everything else and it reduces stress in retirement.
Now, if somebody wanted to contact you, they wanted to ask you questions, they wanted to find out more about how you can help people, how would they find you?
Well, the first place is to just Google us, right? You can Google Higher Ground Financial Group and you can see our reviews, see what people are saying about us, and see who we are.
And then you could also go to our website. If you want to meet with us and just schedule a meeting, you can go to danielandraz.com. or you can go to riskfeesandtaxes.com, and both of those sites will point to our calendar, and you can pick out a time for a video call that works well for you and see us one-on-one.
And I think we put a QR code in the comments as well. So thank you very much to both of you for attending today, and I want to thank all of you for watching Spotlight Television again. Today we focused on Higher Ground Financial Group.